Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Gonzalez with TDI's Communications Office, and thanks for joining us today for our TDI InsureEd webinar on continuing education, CE for agents, adjusters, and escrow officers. You're going to learn what's required, ways to earn CE, and how to get back into compliance if you've fallen behind. We're going to start with a presentation to give you the overview of requirements, and then after that, we're going to take your questions during a live Q&A session. And unironically, you can earn CE credit for today's session. Just be sure to stay online for the whole hour, including that Q&A at the end. All right, we'll start with the presentation and see you back here for the Q&A.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jody Delgado, and I'm the Director of Agent Adjuster Licensing here at TDI, and welcome to the InsureEd webinar on continuing education. Continuing education, or CE as we call it, is managed by the Agent and Adjuster Licensing program. And I wanted to start off just by giving some background of the Agent and Adjuster Licensing program. We call it AAL, and it's inside the Consumer Protection Division. The program is managed by 3 teams. The first 2 teams handle all incoming applications. First, the applications team. This team's responsible for all standard application processing, and they accomplish this within 1 business day. The next team is the administrative review team, and this team is responsible for the processing of all non-standard applications and renewals. Lastly, the continuing education and license maintenance team. This team is responsible for basically anything that is not an application. So yes, that is CE, but it also includes license changes or updates. So that really can be anything from a residency change to a name change to the various types of CE requests that we're going to go further into detail today. For some reference on the type of volume we handle, we currently regulate approximately 850,000 licensees. We processed almost 200,000 applications last year alone, and we processed about 40,000 change requests for license holders. So what is continuing education? Continuing education refers to the ongoing training an individual receives after obtaining a license. You may not always think of it this way, but it's actually a consumer protection mechanism. CE helps to protect the public by creating a more educated workforce. It helps ensure they are up to date with the latest industry standards, and it improves the competency of licensees. It's also a condition of licensure for most licenses held by TDI and required by the Texas Insurance Code. This means you must complete your CE in order to keep your license. A couple more quick stats before we dig into CE compliance. TDI regulates over 400,000 individuals that have CE requirements. This includes most residents and those individuals who have designated Texas as their home state. Most non-residents do not need to complete our CE as long as their home state requires them to do so. We regulate 835 education providers who collectively offer over 12,500 courses. So we have a lot of people completing a lot of CE. In fact, TDI recorded almost 800,000 course completions by individuals last year alone. The courses that are certified by TDI can be 3 different instruction methods. They will either be a classroom course, which means a live course where the pace is set by the instructor, and there are not any tests or quizzes. Your attendance alone counts as evidence of completion for the course, much like what we're doing today. Classroom equivalent courses are online courses where the pace is set by the student that has time elements and interactive inquiry periods to check for understanding at various points in the course. For this course type, you're not going to be able to move forward to another section until you have passed the previous section. The last instruction method is self-study. These are also online courses where the pace is set by the student, but instead of interactive inquiry periods throughout the course, there's just one final exam. This next slide explains CE requirements. Most licenses regulated by TDI require 24 hours with at least 3 of those courses in ethics. This means 24 hours total, not a 27-hour requirement. And this requirement is going to be for what we call the major lines license. So that includes general lines licenses, personal lines licenses, if you're a life-only agent, if you're an adjuster, or if you hold a managing general agent license. Other agent licenses require 10 hours, with 3 of those hours being in ethics. This includes the county mutual, limited lines, and life under 25 license types. Again, not a 13-hour requirement, just a 10-hour requirement, with 3 of those being in ethics. Lastly, escrow officers are required to take 10 hours with 2 in ethics. A 10-hour total, not a 12-hour total. There are some requirements that apply to all license types. The ethics requirement, for example, is just a minimum. You could theoretically take all courses in ethics and they would count towards your overall requirement. Another important one to consider is the self-study limit. No matter the license type, only half of your hours can be in self-study. The rest must be classroom or classroom equivalent. It's important to keep in mind that your first term is generally prorated. So when we issue you your license, we're going to align it to your birth month the year after next. Sometimes that results in a term of less than 2 years, or 24 months. If that's the case, your CE gets prorated. And what that means for most individuals is it's 1 credit required per month of licensure. It's important to keep in mind that if your license is prorated, that also goes toward your self-study limit. So if your CE requirement was reduced down to 20 hours, then your self-study limit is 10 hours. You aren't allowed to repeat courses during the same term, so you may find yourself wanting to repeat a course you enjoyed, or maybe take the self-study version of a classroom course that you got a lot of info on. But if you do so, that second course will not count towards your requirement if you took that second course in the same term as the first course. So pay attention to your term dates to ensure you get credit where you earn it. Excluding escrow officers, whatever course you take for one license counts for all your licenses. So if you are someone that holds both an agent license or an adjuster license, or maybe you hold multiple agent licenses, you aren't expected to take 48 hours or 24 hours each license, just the 24 total. Lastly, all licensees should either use their Sercon account or the public Sercon site to keep up with your CE requirements, view your transcript, or search for courses. So speaking of searching for CE courses, let's look at an example of how to do that. So starting off on the Texas Services page, let's just give a quick rundown of the important services that you see here on the screen. The first link is just what it sounds like, the Continuing Education Transcript Inquiry. It allows you to look up your transcript. Next is the Pre-Licensing Education Transcript Inquiry. Same thing. If you're an individual who took a pre-licensing course in order to obtain licensure here, you're able to go and verify your certification through that service. Next is the Available Course Offerings Inquiry. That's going to be the inquiry you use to find classroom courses, and it'll outline the dates and times that classroom courses are available from CE providers. Next is the Approved Courses Inquiry, which we're going to dig into here in just a few minutes. And that allows you to search for courses. The next inquiry, the Approved Instructor Inquiry, as well as the bottom 2 inquiries, don't apply to Texas because we don't pre-approve instructors. And then the last inquiry to go over is the Approved Providers Inquiry, which allows you to get a list of all the approved providers in Texas. We want to search for courses, so we're going to click on the Approved Courses Inquiry. From here, we're able to toggle between the education types, so either continuing education or pre-licensing education. In this example, we're going to go over continuing education, so we'll leave that. We're going to look at the instruction method, which are going to be the 3 options that we just went over: classroom, classroom equivalent, or self-study. And for this example, we're going to choose classroom equivalent. Next is the course categories. And I want to take a second just to peek at these because there's a lot of options and they become really important when you're talking about product specific training. So for example, if you need to take an annuity course, you have your annuity courses here at the top. Same thing for Medicare related courses or long-term care courses. And lastly, if you're an escrow officer or you're going to be taking the escrow title courses to gain most of your credit. But for what we're going to call just normal agent or adjuster CE, we're looking at ethics or general. So let's click those. And then down here, you are able to indicate the amount of hours you may be searching for. So if you are someone that only has 2 hours left of your CE requirement, you could put 2 here and it would only populate courses that are 2 hours in length. You could also search by keyword. So if you're someone who's interested in learning about homeowners insurance, you could type by keyword here. And then finally, if you did happen to know the specific course ID you're looking for, you could enter that here as well. But we're just going to hit submit and just look at everything that comes out. And this is the output page, and it gives a lot of information about the course. First, the title. Using the title, you can gain a lot of info about what the course is actually going to be about. So a course on diminished value and insurance is probably going to be heavily taught on diminished value. It will also tell you the amount of hours or credits that the course is approved for. The category, and so in this case, we only search for general or ethics, so this one's a general. And then the instruction method. Again, we only search for the classroom equivalent course. So we're only populating classroom equivalent, but there are the 3 other categories or 2 other categories that could show up here on this method section. And then lastly, there's going to generally be a provider site here at the top that'll show you how to get to that specific provider's website where you could sign up for courses. So you're not going to use this inquiry to sign up for the courses. You're going to use this inquiry to find the courses that may interest you, search for specific types of courses, and then you're going to use the contact information provided in this inquiry to contact the provider to sign up for the course. So what if you didn't want to take certified CE courses, ones that are approved and pre-approved by TDI? Licensees also have the option to obtain CE credit through methods outside of certified CE courses. One of the ways to do this is through what we call qualifying credit. This is credit you can get by taking another qualifying insurance course and reporting it to TDI. Some of the ways to get qualifying credit are taking an in-person course at a college or university. So this course must be insurance related, and we will grant classroom credit based on the actual number of hours of classroom instruction. You can also get credits for your efforts in pursuit of a national designation, such as CLU or CHFC. This credit can be up to 12 hours of self-study and is limited to either the coursework you did or evidence of passing the examination in pursuit of that designation. So again, it's only applicable to that pursuit of the designation, not the ongoing CE for that designation. We will also grant hour-for-hour credit for insurance-related CE taken by courses approved by either the State Bar or the State Board of Public Accountancy. For escrow officers, this is also extended to the Real Estate Commission courses. TDI will grant licensed continuing education credit for successfully completing courses certified or approved by the Federal Farm Credit Insurance Corporation on an hour-for-hour basis. You could also get credit if you find yourself as an instructor of a CE course. So you would get credit both for attending the course as the instructor, but you would also get self-study credit for preparing to teach that course. It is important to note that the qualifying credit is limited to the scenarios I just went over and that are listed here again on the screen. As an insurance professional, it is likely that you're going to take many trainings throughout your career. Some of those might be mandatory by your company, some may not, but while they may be valuable to your career, they can't count for CE unless it's one of those scenarios listed on the screen. If you do have a qualifying insurance course you would like to report to TDI, You can do so by either completing the FIN 522 if you're an agent or adjuster, or the FIN T22 if you're an escrow officer. Every form is going to require you to send in supporting documentation depending on the course you took. So for example, if it's a college or university course you're claiming, you're going to be asked to submit your transcript to show proof of completion of that course, and then the course outline or syllabus to show that it was insurance related. And so you'll just submit that course with the supporting documentation and send that to ce@tdi.texas.gov. One more way to obtain credit outside of the certified CE courses is through association credit. This is for licensees who currently hold a national designation or are members of a national insurance association. And you can receive up to 4 hours of self-study credit per term by completing the FIN 523, indicating that you either attended a conference for the association or reviewed educational materials published by that association. Again, we're going to need supporting documentation, so just make sure you follow the instructions on that FIN 523 before submitting to the CE team. But for both qualified and association credits, you're going to want to check your credits to confirm processing by TDI. And you're going to see this come up as the CE admin credit on your public transcript. So depending on the situation and what you're asking for, some of those credits are going to show up as self-study, and they're going to count towards your self-study limit. So always pay attention to your transcript to keep up with those requirements. Speaking of the CE transcript, I want to take a moment to show you how to access your transcript even if you don't have a CIRCON account. This is also a helpful tool for licensing coordinators that may help manage multiple licenses within an organization. So from the main CIRCON page, we're going to click Look Up Courses or Transcript. And now this page should look familiar from earlier. This time, we're going to be selecting the Continuing Education Transcript Inquiry. From there, you would type in your name and license number, and then your transcript will populate. So there is a lot of information on this page, so we're just going to start at the very, very top. So your education review period, that's going to be the term that you're currently looking at. So you are able to toggle between terms. So if you're somebody who's been licensed with us for a long time, we're going to have a history of your continuing education compliance. Next are your review dates. So your begin date is the day your term that you've selected started, and then your review date is the date that your CE is going to be due. The next thing is going to be your compliance summary. So it's really just a quick snapshot of have you done what you're supposed to or not. So if you are compliant, you're going to see that green check with the yes, and if you're not, you're going to see a red X with no. Scrolling down a little further here, we have the requirements section, and this is just going to give, kind of the math for your CE requirements. So it's telling you what you owe, your required hours, and what you've done, and what is remaining, and then your current CE status. So scrolling further down here, it's going to list all the courses selected for the current term. So you can see the course hours, the date it was completed, and then this handy sentence here shows you of the hours that were completed, or of this course that was completed, how the hours were applied. So right here, there are 3 hours applied to the ethics and total general requirements. That's because it was an ethics course, and so it counts towards both. If you ever see this sentence say anything less than that, maybe it says 1 hour or even says 0 hours, that's going to be a good indicator that you've reached your self-study limit if that happened to be a self-study course. If you also see it being 0 hours, it could also be the case that you've retaken this course. So just always look at your transcript fully, and it's going to provide a lot of good detail for you to maintain your compliance. So let's talk about not doing CE. If you are licensed and CE compliant for long enough with Texas, there will come a time where you won't have to do CE. Texas is unique in that it's one of few states that offer a CE permanent exemption. You may also have heard this being called being grandfathered in or the grandfather clause, but it means you don't have to do CE. And it's available to licensees who have been continuously licensed for at least 20 years while being CE compliant. Now, continuous means no gaps in licensure, so you can't ever let your license fail to renew or leave the industry and come back. We're not looking at cumulative totals. You have to maintain that continuous licensure with no gaps. If you think this applies to you, someone that's been licensed for 20 years while maintaining that CE compliance, you can submit the request to the CE team either through CERCON or by using the FIN 517 form. It is important to note that this exemption is only available to agents and adjusters. It's not available to escrow officers. So it's just agents and adjusters. Lastly, it doesn't negate your need to renew your license. So even though you don't have to do CE, you're still going to have to complete your renewal application every 2 years and pay your renewal fee in order to keep your license active. Another tool available to licensees is the CE extension request. There are some times an individual is unable to complete CE through no fault of their own. Maybe there was some kind of emergency or significant illness in the family or for themselves. If that's the case, a licensee can request an extension of time to complete the CE without incurring a CE fine. Now, there are only limited circumstances where an extension is allowed, and business or financial reasons are not eligible for a data extension. And a couple important caveats to this. This doesn't extend your license term, so your license expiration date is not extended, and your license still will not renew until all requirements are met. Also, no matter the extension, you only have 90 days past the expiration of your license to become CE compliant, regardless of the extension. After that, while we may grant you an extension so that you don't owe a fine, you're still going to have to reapply and reinstate your license for failing to renew. If you do need to submit an extension request, you can do so either through CERCON or by completing the FIN 517 form. You can also use this form to appeal a fine after it's been assessed, but the same rules are going to apply. We will only be able to waive that fine under limited circumstances. So, speaking of renewing and reinstating your license for CE issues, some important things to keep in mind. Your license will expire the last day of your birth month every other year. In order to renew, you must pay the renewal fee and submit the renewal application, and then you also have to complete CE requirements. Both of these must occur or your license cannot renew. Now, the easiest way to complete your CE requirements is by doing your CE on time. Otherwise, it's going to be completing the CE late and paying the applicable fine. If you do fail to renew your license, you will have to reinstate your license. This causes you to have to be fingerprinted again, and it creates a gap in your licensure, which, what we talked about earlier, it's going to hurt your eligibility for the CE permanent exemption. The timer and the counter is going to start over. So having to go through reinstatement is really not something you want to do. Some quick facts that might help you avoid that. So first, general CE credits will count for all license types except escrow licenses. Escrow licenses have to complete title escrow-specific CE. Escrow hours, like we talked about earlier, will count for all license types, even escrow. Importantly, CE providers have 30 days to report CE completion to TDI and to issue a certificate of completion. So don't be the person that waits till the last week or day or hour to complete your CE before your license expires. It's likely going to result in delays. You can complete CE at any time during your term. But if you do happen to fail to complete your CE on time, you're going to have to deal with a fine, which is $50 per hour, up to a $500 maximum. The fine does not apply to escrow officers. Luckily, we do now have a mechanism to receive CE fine payments online. This is saving a lot of time for licensees, so This is a relatively recent function that we have. And before, if someone had a CE fine, you're looking at a 7 to 10 day delay because you're having to mail us a check or money order to pay for the fine, and then you're having to wait for us to manually process it. Now you're able to do so online. You do need a Sercon account, but the Sercon account is free to set up. If you're paying the fine for someone else, you just need, or even yourself, you're going to need the invoice ID and license number of the individual that you're paying the fee for. There is a service fee to use this service, but payments are instantly processed versus the 7 to 10 day waiting period that your license is not renewing because you're waiting for the mail service and then for us to manually process this payment. So remember, your license isn't going to renew until your CE is compliant, which includes us receiving and processing that fine. CE fine payments are non-refundable. So don't be that person that quickly pays the CE fine just to get your license to renew, and then you appeal your CE fine or try to get granted an extension so we can refund you that fine payment, because we aren't able to do that. Since we are talking about CE fines, let's go through real quick how to use this newer service. Again, you need a Sercon account, but once you're logged in here, we're going to look at the bottom left, which is the pay state invoice. From here, it's going to ask you some questions. So first is the state. What state are you paying for? Texas is actually the only state offering this service at the moment. So Texas is going to be the only option. So you're going to choose Texas. Then it's going to ask for that invoice ID. That's going to be sent to you via email. When you get your CE fine notice, it will have a invoice ID. That's where you're going to pull that. And then next is an option to verify your identity. You can use NPN or license number. We're going to use license number here. And then you'll search for the invoice. And when you search for that invoice, the invoice will pop up. It'll let you know the invoice status, the date it's due, the amount that's due, the processing fee. And if you want to click through and continue, you first need to check that you understand that all the fees are non-refundable. You'll continue to the payment screen, which is just a credit card payment service. But we do get that payment, within minutes. So again, major time saver. So just shifting gears a little bit, obtaining a license generally authorizes you to sell a certain line of insurance products. However, the insurance code requires additional training if you're an agent wanting to sell certain insurance products. There are certifications you must take before you sell them, and then ongoing CE you need to maintain that certification. Those products are annuities, Medicare, long-term care, and small employer health benefit plans. And we're going to go into more detail on each requirement. So starting with annuities, if you are an agent that wants to sell annuities, you first, before you can start selling them, need to take an initial 4-hour certification course, which can be found by checking that annuity best interest course category that we saw there when we were searching for courses. After you complete that certification, you need to take 8 hours per license term after that in order to maintain that compliance and continue to sell annuities. The good news is those courses do count towards your overall general or CE requirement, and that the CE portion, so that 8-hour course, is eligible for the permanent exemption. The certification is not. So even if you're an individual who has that CE permanent exemption, if you're somebody who wants to start selling annuities, you need to take that 4-hour course first. Next are Medicare-related products. This requires an initial 8-hour certification course. You can find those by searching for the Cert-Medicare-related course category. Then it's going to have an ongoing 4-hour requirement each license term after that, and you can find that by searching for CE-Medicare-related. Again, the courses are going to count towards your general CE requirement, but differently than annuities, neither of these requirements is eligible for permanent exemption. So while you may not have a general CE requirement anymore because you have that permanent exemption indicator on, you're still going to have to take these Medicare courses, even if you're CE permanent exempt. Next is long-term care, a lot like the Medicare courses. You're going to have an 8-hour initial certification. You can find that by checking that CERT-LTC partnership course category. And then after that, you're going to have a 4-hour CE requirement ongoing for any time that you're selling the long-term care partnership products. Again, the courses are going to count towards your general CE requirement, but neither requirement is eligible for the permanent exemption. Lastly, small employer health benefit plans, again, requires an initial 8-hour certification course. You can find that by searching for CERT-Small Employer Health. After that, you're going to have an ongoing 4-hour CE requirement per license term, and you can find those courses by searching for CE-Small Employer Health. The courses are still going to count towards your general CE requirement, and neither of these requirements are eligible for the permanent exemption. So again, if you're somebody who's selling these products, regardless of your CE exemption status, you're still going to need to take these courses to maintain compliance. Now, the last CE-specific topic that I want to touch on here is surrendering a license. When you surrender your license, it does not cancel or eliminate your CE requirement. CE is tied to the duration of your license, and it's accrued every month on an individual that's actively licensed. So just like we prorate your license requirement when you first start, or your CE requirement when you first start with your initial license term, we're going to prorate on your last license term. If CE is not completed, or if you're not CE compliant at the time of your surrender, it could cause problems for you if you ever want to come back and get licensed again. So if you ever did come back and we see that CE non-compliance on your record, you may have to either complete the CE or pay a fine or both. Now, there are some ways to not owe CE when surrendering. First off, do your CE. But otherwise, if you surrender within 6 months of your new license term, your CE isn't going to be required. So after you've renewed and completed your most recent CE requirements, if you're really early on in that new term, we're not going to require you to complete the CE. If you hold a CE permanent exemption at the time of surrender, you're not going to have to complete any CE. And if you do decide to come back to the industry and reapply with us, that CE permanent exemption will still be on your record. If you end up moving out of state and you transfer your resident license to another jurisdiction, you will not owe us the CE. The idea is that now another state is monitoring you for the CE compliance. With any CE requirement, you could apply for a waiver due to extenuating circumstance. So that also applies here when you're surrendering your license. If and when you do surrender, you will receive a notice from TDI letting you know if you have a CE requirement or not, and that confirmation is going to come via email. Now, the last topic I want to hit on is the TDI website. This is such a great resource to use for information concerning all aspects of your license. And we at TDI worked really hard to make sure that our website is accurate, informative, and helpful so that both current and prospective licensees have all the information easily accessible at any time. You don't have to wait to call us. The chances are our website has that information for you. So starting from the agent adjuster licensing section from our website, you can see that everything is broken down by specific license type. So you would click on the license type you're asking about or that you're interested in getting more information on. And the information that's going to populate for you is going to be specific to that license type. So you know that you're getting the most accurate information based off your specific situation. For this example, let's choose the General Lines Life Accident and Health License. When you're on a specific license page, you can see that it's now separated by either applying for a license or manage your license. And each of these bullets are going to be incredibly specific to your circumstance. And we even use decision trees on here to cater the information and the instructions that you might receive down to what you were needing to get. So if it's a license renewal that you're interested in, before we populate the information, we're going to ask you questions about where are you in your renewal? Are you about to renew? Have you already renewed? Has your license been expired? How long has it been expired? And based off how you answer those questions, we're going to generate the correct information for you and give you the guidance that way. Same thing with CE. The CE is going to be incredibly specific to that license type and where you are at in your CE compliance journey. So I just want to wrap up with just some best practices that highlight some of the major points we covered today. So first, a license cannot renew unless your CE is compliant. It's important to note we also can't give you a new license if you have a previous non-compliance on your record. So if you're trying to get an adjuster license, but you have an agent CE compliance issue, we cannot issue that adjuster license. The easiest way to achieve that CE compliance is to complete your required hours before your license expires. Remember, don't wait till the last minute. You can take it at any time in your term. If you're somebody who wants to claim either that qualifying or association credit that we talked about, submit those requests as you take the courses or training. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till your license expired. Don't wait till you've already incurred a fine to try to get credit backdated. If you do find yourself out of compliance, pay that fine online and complete your CE as soon as possible. Another best practice is to utilize the resources that are available to you. Our website, the public transcript, the course searches that we all went over, they're all relevant tools in your efforts of CE compliance. Some ways that you can help us help you in your path to CE compliance. First and foremost, keep your email address up to date. Email is going to be the primary contact for all official department communication. We do not mail out notices. If you do have questions, please reach out and reach out sooner than later. For CE-specific questions, you can reach out to the CE department at ce@tdi.texas.gov, and we typically respond to your inquiries within 1 business day. Lastly, your individual CERCON account can be a great tool in CE and license maintenance. It's going to have all the up-to-date information on where you stand with your license and your CE, and you can use it to apply for renewal, pay that CE fine, or even apply for other licenses. And that is all I have for everybody today, and thank you so much for your time.
Right, super. Welcome back to the Q&A portion of our webinar. And Jody, if you'll turn on your camera and your microphone. Thank you. Joining us to answer your questions is Jody Delgado, our presenter today, and also the director of the Agent and Adjuster Licensing Office. Just a couple of ground rules before we get going. Any questions about a specific company or situation that you're having right now, we're not going to answer in this open forum, but you can always email those questions to ce@tdi.texas.gov. We've said that address several times, but you'll find it in the chat, and I'll also repeat it before we wrap up today. And please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window. I see many of you are already doing that. And we'll try to respond to as many as we can. If we don't get to yours today, again, you can reach out to us at the email and we'll try to get you that answer. Jody, you ready to get started?
I am.
We've got a few dozen questions, so we may not get to them all, but let's see what we can do. Starting off, can you explain the self-study limit again? Where do I find the instructions like the FIN 523 that you mentioned?
Oh, so the self-study limit the thing to keep in mind is half of your hours can only be in self-study. So only half can be in self-study. So for most people, that means 12 hours. You have a 12-hour limit. But if you're somebody that has less than that, maybe you have a 10-hour requirement or a prorated 20-hour requirement, you need to pay attention. The self-study limit's always going to be half. Those forms have to do with submitting qualifying credit or association credit that typically do count towards self-study. So it's just something to keep in mind and use your transcript to make sure that you're adding it up correctly. The transcript will add it up for you. You don't actually have to do the math, but it'll give you that information to make sure that you're in line and getting the classroom and classroom equivalent courses that are required for the other half of your license.
Awesome. Okay, speaking of transcripts, how long does it take for the courses that I finished to show up on that official transcript?
So it depends, but CE providers have up to 30 days to report hours to TDI, which is what prompts them to show up on your transcript. So we do encourage people to take CE courses sooner rather than later. Don't wait until 2 days before your license expires because that CE provider does technically have 30 days to get the information to us and your license isn't going to renew. While we might get the report that you completed your hours on time, it could still be 30 days later and your license isn't going to renew until we have that information.
Okay, sounds good. Here's another one. I'm an escrow officer. How many hours of ethics content do I need to take? I've been hearing different answers. Is it 2 or is it 3 hours?
So escrow is unique in that it's only 2 hours, and 3 hours is going to be for all other license types that require CE.
Okay, good answer. Um, are the CE requirements that we have for each year?
They're not each year, they're each licensing term, which
Okay.
typically means 2 years for most people. There are occasions, especially when you first get your license, that your license may be prorated to a shorter or longer amount, but generally it's a 2-year licensing term.
Okay. For the 24 hours for major lines that the ethics portion is 3. So is that a total of 24 hours, 3 of which have to be ethics, or is that 24 plus 3?
It's 24 and 3 of which have to be in ethics. So your total requirement is 24 hours. 3 of them have to be in ethics, at least 3. You could technically take all 24 in ethics if you
Hmm.
wanted to. So anything you take in ethics will also count in general.
Okay, sounds good. If you take more CE courses than required in that term, are the excess hours carried over to your next term?
They are not. We do not do rollover CE hours. The only time you can earn CE is taking a course within your current term.
Okay, so you want to time that out for the term that you're
That's
in.
right.
Does the active date matter when taking escrow officer courses? I noticed that some were older dates.
So it's information we provide to licensees so they have it, so they know how long the course has been approved for. At the end of the day, we have approved the course, and courses are subject to renewal and re-review every 2 years. So if it's showing up as active, we have approved and reviewed that course for continuing education credit. But that active date is just information for you to have as a licensee.
Okay. So you know if it's a classic or a brand new piece of
There you
study.
go.
Here's one. I attended a conference for an industry conference last year. Does something like that count towards my CE? Is that a qualifying credit?
So it could be an association credit if you meet the requirements. So just attending any conference generally isn't going to give you CE credit, but if you're a member of a nationally recognized insurance association and you attend one of their conferences, you can submit the association credit form to us and provide the documentation, and we can review it.
We'll let you know. Are Zoom webinars like this considered classroom experience or is this self-study?
It kind of depends. So what dictates a classroom course is going to be when the pace is set by the instructor. So like this, the pace was set by the instructor. Sometimes you could have a self-study course that, well, if it's Zoom, it's generally going to be classroom, but
Mhm.
recorded videos can sometimes be self-study. So it just kind of depends. You just want to pay attention to the classroom method or the method on the course.
And I guess if they have a question, they can always reach out to us and ask, right?
That's right.
All right. If a license is reinstated during the 90-day grace period, is this going to break my 20-year streak for that continuous exemption for CE?
So if your license is renewed, so if you are within the 90 days after your license expired, you're not in reinstatement yet. You're only getting to reinstatement after 90 days. So if you renew within 90 days of your expiration, you essentially just late renewed. So that doesn't affect the break for continuous licensure. Now, if you do get to that point where it's after 90 days, then you're gonna lose your license. It's gonna go down, and that does count towards the break in licensure. So your 20-year timer essentially is gonna start over.
Wow, that's interesting. So you don't want to do that on your 19th year.
You absolutely don't want to do that on your
Stay
19th
within your
year.
compliance. Here's another question. What if you have more CE credits than you need for your current renewal? I think we answered this one. Does the additional credits roll over?
Additional credits don't roll over.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, if you have more than 3 hours of ethics, can the overage be redesignated to regular hours?
Yes, so not even the overage. Any ethics course you take will count towards your overall CE requirement. So you don't have to hit that 3 hours and then everything extra counts. Hour one counts.
Okay. Like you said, you can take all ethics courses if you want there.
That's right.
Once this, oh yeah, once this meeting is complete, will we see an update in hours under our Ethics and Compliance Express?
Say that one more time.
Yeah. Once the meeting is complete, will we see the update show up in the hours under Ethics in Compliance Express?
So I don't believe this one's considered an ethics course, but it would be a general course.
So that's where it will show up there.
Mhm.
Okay. And I have a Texas license right now, but I live in California. Am I able to adjust claims in other states, in all states?
So your Texas license is going to authorize you to adjust claims in Texas. And if you're interested in other states, I would encourage you to contact those specific states on what the requirements are to
Okay,
adjust claims.
sounds good. What exactly are ethic hours? Does that mean a certain type of CE courses, or does that just mean that you've started taking courses?
It's a certain type of CE course that is going to go over ethical considerations that you may face in your tenure as a licensee.
Okay. Next question. Can you repeat the CE credits regarding programs approved by the state bar?
Yes, so if you are taking approved CE courses that are also approved by the state bar, as long as they're insurance related, you could submit that to TDI as a qualifying credit, and we're going to approve hour for hour the same way the state bar approved the course.
Okay. Here's a question, I guess, about the term lengths or the term settings. When my license is renewed, how soon after that can I start working on my next set of CE hours? Is there a time period to wait so I don't overlap, or can I just continue taking CE classes and they'll serve me in the term that I'm in?
So there could be a little bit of a time period, depends on how early you renew. But what you want to do is you want to pay attention to your begin date, your CE begin date, and your end review date, and take the courses in between those dates. So if you're someone who renewed a month before your license actually expired, your new term's not going to actually start considering for CE until one day after when your license would have expired.
Okay, thank you. Next up, when you're getting ready to apply for that permanent CE exemption, does it automatically apply to all the licenses that you hold?
It will, except for escrow officers. Escrow officers are not eligible for the CE permanent exemption, but if you're someone who holds an agent license and an adjuster license or multiple agent licenses, once you obtain that CE permanent exemption, it applies for everything.
Okay. Here's a specific situation. My license expired October of last year when I was deployed with FEMA. Do I need to get fingerprints again from Identigo?
That is specific. It sounds like probably, but if you want to know for sure, I would shoot an email to us so we can look at your specific situation.
All right. Regarding CE fines, is the $500 fine for each license type, or is it $500 max for all the licenses?
It is $500 max per license, except escrow. Escrow does not have a CE fine.
Okay, so they're for individual per license then. We have an insurance producer who will not be completing their CE until the day before their license expiration date. Is that going to work? What's the status of their license while Texas is processing the submission?
So they're going to have, it depends on the CE provider. It's very well possible that the CE provider reports those hours to us the next day and everything renews like normal. The CE provider could wait the full 30 days. That's how long they have to get the information to TDI. In that case, your license is in an active expired status where you're likely going to late renew. As long as everything got done on time and you paid your renewal on time, it's just going to late renew.
Okay, sounds good. Somebody's asking about the slides. Yeah, we're going to send out a email in a few days with the whole recording of the training as well as this Q&A. So you'll have all the slides in there. What's the form number for the CE waiver? Is there a special form to appeal CE fines?
So they're the same form to appeal the fine, appeal waiver, we use that the same way in extension, and even the permanent exemption are all used on the same form, which is the FIN 517.
Okay. If you complete your CE within the 90-day extension time and you pay your fine and it results in a renewal, does that hurt your chances of being approved to become grandfathered in finally after the 20 years, no longer required to complete CE?
It doesn't, because you completing late CE and then paying your subsequent fine, that is how you achieve CE compliance. And what we're going to look at when you request a permanent exemption is, have you maintained CE compliance, and are you compliant for all of your license terms? So if you've done those two things, late CE plus the fine, you're going to show as compliant after that fine is paid.
All right. So that 90-day time period is there for a reason. It is a true grace period. Could you please identify again where I can find the breakdown of the transcript to the current licensing period? I get into the transcript, but it's bringing in everything that I've done. Can you just show me where to find just the current term?
Yeah, it should be at the very, very top where you can look at CE review periods. It's just a drop-down menu at the very, very top. But if you have any other problems, we'll happily look at any like screenshots you want to send over or anything like that, and we can try to talk you through it.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Include the pictures. I have 3 different 1-hour course IDs right now in Circon, all related to hail. Will that count as 3 hours, or is it just going to be the one? Circon is indicating that all 3 are counting towards the general requirements.
So if Circon's going to do the math and the work for you. If Circon's counting all 3 of them, they're going to count. Just because they're under the same subject doesn't mean that they're not going to count. When something doesn't count is when you take the same course, but maybe a different method, or 2 courses by the same provider that are really, really similar. We might indicate that those aren't going to give you separate credits. But if your CE transcript is saying they all 3 count towards that general requirement, then you're good.
All right. Here's a question about the legal side of things. Does credit for college law courses that I get have to be submitted the year they were taken, or can I add those in later?
So you can add them in later, but where you're going to get credit is if you took those courses during your term. So if you took them in the first year of your term and you're just now telling us about them in the second year of your term, they'll count because that course was taken during your term. Now, you can't tell us about a course you took 5 years ago and want it to count for your current CE term.
Okay, sounds good. Do the CE credits apply to all my licenses?
Generally speaking, yes. Escrow is an exception. So escrow requires specific escrow title CE. But if you're taking a general credit, that's going to count towards all agent adjuster licenses. If you're taking an ethics credit, that's going to count towards all license types, including escrow.
Okay. Here's a question about the costs for CE classes. Are there any free options for CE classes, or they all have fees associated?
It's going to depend on the CE provider. So I think we have around 840 CE providers now. And you would just have to do your research on looking into what is offered by each provider. They're all going to be making their own decisions on that.
Do some insurance companies have their in-house CE efforts?
They do.
Okay, so that may be an option there too. If I'm grandfathered and become incompliant after the time, but then follow the necessary steps to become compliant again, am I still grandfathered, or does that start the clock again?
So if you do obtain that CE permanent exemption, you're never non-compliant in CE because you don't need to take CE. But if you mean you failed to renew your license and you forgot to pay the renewal, yes, once you obtain your CE permanent exemption, even if your license goes down, when you come back to us, your CE permanent exemption is still on your record.
Okay, sounds great. Another incentive to earn there. How do we know when our license is going to expire?
The licenses are going to expire the last day of your birth month every other year. So you just want to pay attention to that first time we issue it. And after that, it's just every other year, same day, every other year.
Okay. The review date on transcript is the date that the continuing education is due. Is that correct?
That's right. And it should be the last day of your license term. That's also going to be the day your license expires.
Okay. And so it's not one specific date. It depends on your birthday and that birthday month.
Right. It goes with your license term.
How can we ensure that courses get counted for our current CE credit? Is there a way to check that?
Yes, so your CE transcript is going to be the way to verify that any course you took gets counted towards your requirement. If after 30 days of completing that course you don't see that, you want to contact that CE provider that you took the course with and make sure that they've reported the hours to the state. And if you ever have any issues with that, we're here to help.
Okay. Here's a little bit of another situation. My first license is from Florida, and it was life and health in 2022. But then in 2023, I moved to Texas, and I changed that to a new Texas license. The question is, if I decide now in 2025 to obtain a non-resident license in Florida, would I have to recover life, health, and annuity business?
That sounds like a specific question not related to CE either. So I would encourage to send that if you have any questions like that to our main license inquiry inbox, which is license@tdi.texas.gov.
Okay, excellent. If my last CE credit does not appear in time for the expiration date, is there any recourse for me? What can I do about that?
So it just kind of depends on where you're at. If you took the CE on time, you want to make sure you're in contact with that provider to report the hours to us. Like I said, providers have 30 days to report the hours, so you might just be waiting for that provider to report the hours, and then your license would late renew after. When they report the hours, they're going to report your completion date. So as long as you completed it on time, we're not going to hold you accountable for a fine or anything like that if we have proof that you completed it on time. It's just that you might be waiting for a provider to report the hours to us, and your license won't renew until we have that information on your transcript.
Okay. Here's another question about the exemption. I first got licensed back in 2007, but I had a fine that I had to pay because of a delay in CE in 2023. Does that mean it has to start over, or will I still qualify for the 20-year exemption soon?
So a fine doesn't necessarily mean you're disqualified and had to start over, but that sounds like a very specific question that if you want us to look into it, you can send us an email with your specific license number.
Okay. My company is handling CD for me. Can I still get access to the Circon website? Does that cost money?
It doesn't. So you could have a free Circon account that is your own, and you can also access the public transcript. Then that's the ones we went over today. And you don't need an account to do that. And I would encourage you, we have a lot of individuals that we hear, my company takes care of it, or
Mhm.
they're responsible for that. They are not. The individual is responsible for the CE. So if you want to make sure that things are getting done, look at that CE public transcript or create a free Circon account.
Okay. Um, what is the earliest date that I can renew a license?
So we're going to send you a notice, but that's going to be 90 days before your license expires.
Okay. Is classroom and classroom equivalent the same thing?
They are not the same thing. So a classroom course is going to be where the pace is set by the instructor, and then a classroom equivalent course is a self-paced, a student-paced course that's online, that has different quizzes, if you will, throughout the course. That's going to check for your understanding.
Okay. This may be one that needs to be emailed. It says, what about CE for an IRS enrolled agent? Does some of that CE and ethics count for regular insurance CE?
Doesn't sound like it, but if you want us to review a qualifying credit, we're happy to do that. It's just limited to those 5 scenarios that are already on that qualifying credit form. So if you're wanting to fill out a form for us and we give you those 5 options on that form and you can't figure out where your CE fits into that, it's a good indicator that it probably doesn't count for qualifying credit CE.
Gotcha. Here's another question. Are you only able to take a total of 12 hours of self-study credits within a compliance period? Is that right?
If your requirement is 24 hours, then your self-study limit is 12. The actual self-study limit is half of your requirement. So I don't like saying 12 because not everyone has 24 hours.
So it's half of everything.
It's half.
Okay. Do you think TDI will ever consider lowering the CE requirements from 24 to 20?
That's not something that I'm aware of happening.
Okay. We're going with what we have now. Um, So if I see a class that I'd like to take in Circon, how do I locate it in Circon?
So you're not going to locate it in Circon. You're going to use the CE transcript, excuse me, the CE course inquiry to look at the course hours. And then generally on the inquiry report is going to have the contact information for that CE provider.
Okay. I'm afraid we're out of time. The alarms are going off here. Um, I'll do one more question here. As a resident in another state, how do I get those completed CE credits into the Circon transcript?
So if you're a non-resident, you probably don't need us to have the courses on your transcript. You typically don't have a CE requirement unless you're someone who's designated the home state. But if you're taking a certified course, the only way to get it reported to TDI is by the education provider reporting that to TDI.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. We're going to have to wrap it up there. I know we've still got probably a few dozen questions remaining, but you can always email those to us if we didn't get to it. Or if you think of something later that you'd like to learn about, please send that to the email that we mentioned, ce@tdi.texas.gov, and we'll try to get you an answer. And like we mentioned, you'll also get a follow-up email in a few days that's going to have the whole recording of everything that you saw today. You can use it for your own review. You can share it with coworkers. It's going to have all the slides, this Q&A discussion, and maybe a few links that we might find useful. And that's it. That's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for participating. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you at the next TDI InsureEd webinar.